I'd like to share, for those of you who don't know what spiritual literacy, the book is, it's a collection of about 650 short takes on everyday experience that we found in books that we were reviewing. So it's everything from spiritual books to novels to poetry. But the idea is that each little 2-3 paragraph piece is an illustration of how you can see the world through spiritual eyes. And I'd like to share one of my very favorite passages from the book. It's from the artist Frederick Frank. Frederick created a place in Warwick, New York called Potchman Terrace, which is a sculpture garden for all of his work. It's a wonderful day trip. It will change your life. He and his wife are both on the other side now, but their presence is there, and it's just wonderful. There's just, his work is, we have a gallery actually on our website of the work, but I encourage you to try to go to Warwick if you can. So this is a book by Frederick called Fingers Pointing Toward the Sacred. I was 5 and lying in high grass. A bee hummed close to my eye and frightened me. Then the bee started to suck honey, and at that moment I became sun, bee, flower, and grass. Me had evaporated with my fear. Then, when I was 11, on a country road, I saw a snow flurry approach from afar. The first few snowflakes fell around my feet from the dark, wintry sky. I saw how some of the flakes melted immediately on impact and others stayed. Again, me disappeared, melted with snowflakes, became one with road and sky and snowstorm. It has happened often, always when least expected. A few hours later, before leaving on this journey, driving somewhere in New Jersey, I lost my way back to the parkway. At last, at a traffic light, stood a pedestrian, a very fat man in a battered Homburg hat. A greasy cigar stump stuck out straight from what looked more like a snout than a face. "How do I get to Route 4?" I called out. "Route 4, he repeated, chewing on his cigar. "Nothing to it." His little eyes twinkled with kindness. "Take a left at the second light, can't miss it." He had put his fat hand on my sleeve and given a friendly squeeze. I looked at him and saw. I tried to thank him, but no sound came. I made a kind of bow. The jelly had become man, or human. What is a spiritual experience? A snowflake melting, a bee sucking honey, a fat man at a traffic light. Trivia. So I'm often, with a book like Spiritual Literacy and kind of known as spiritual person, and with a website called Spirituality in Practice, I'm often asked to define spirituality, and that's it to me. Trivia. Little acts, everyday things, moments when we feel connected to something that is greater than our individual self. Times when we serve others, like the fat man did. And here's another definition that I like. This is from a dear friend, Brother David Steindl-Rast, Benedictine monk. So Brother David writes, "Sometimes people get the mistaken notion that spirituality is a separate department of life, the penthouse of our experience. But rightly understood, it is a vital awareness that pervades all realms of our being. Someone will say, I come alive when I listen to music, or I come to life when I garden, or I come alive when I play golf. Wherever we come alive, that is the area in which we are spiritual. And then we can say, I know at least how one is spiritual in that area. To be vital, awake, aware in all areas of our lives is the task. It's never really accomplished, but it's the goal. So I love that definition too, because it really says, start where you are. Think about that for a moment. Where do you come alive? When do you feel most like your true self? Because that's where you're being spiritual. So this definition reminds me of the Judson Women's Circle. Now this has to have been, maybe it was in the early 90s. And we used to meet in someone's home, and the hostess would present a question. And then we would all go around the circle and answer that one question. So when the circle met at our loft, and I got to propose the question, I said, what is your spiritual practice? And the answers were really interesting. Now Judson, additional background here, I would say that Judson at that time hadn't really talked a lot about spirituality. In fact, I remember when we were having congregational meetings to talk about, this was after Howard Moody retired, and the search committee was preparing the search that eventually called Peter Larman. And so we're having these meetings and people saying, well, what do you want in a minister and all this? And so I said, well, I thought it would be nice if we had a minister who was interested in spirituality, like we have now, 2 of them. And I was asked to define what I meant by that term. And I remember I didn't do very well at that. I kind of bumbled around saying, well, I mean, somebody that would do this or that. I'm better at it now, but then I wasn't quite sure how to explain it. So we didn't really have this kind of spiritual language going in this community at that point. So here we are in the Judson Women's Circle again. And people were saying things like, well, I don't really have a spiritual practice, but I love to sing in the choir at Judson. Or, I don't think of myself as very spiritual, but I do think about times when I like to talk to my children about the things that are really important to them. Or somebody said, you know, I guess maybe my practice is prayer, but I really do appreciate the chances I get to visit people in their homes or to talk to someone in the AIDS community. And somebody else would say, well, I don't have a spiritual practice, but I love to journal, and every morning I get up and I write in my journal. So I remember at the time thinking, yeah, and so I kind of I don't know if I said anything at the time, but I would like to say it now, which is that you all are a lot more spiritual than you think you are. And I think we all are. As Brother David puts it, wherever you come alive, that's where you're being spiritual. And this is a very alive place. And your lives are full of passion and compassion and activity and service, and that's all what spirituality is about. So whether it's singing or playing with your children or doing sports or marching in a protest or any of the things, that is a spiritual practice, and please claim it as your spiritual practice. Fred's and my work and our website is all about that kind of spirituality. It's about the kind that you live out every day. And we're grateful, really grateful to Judson for encouraging us to define it and to expand it over the years. So, thank you.